and welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. Black Knight Nation podcast is brought to you by Higher Echelon, a company run by Joe Ross, who's a former Army fullback, former Army assistant coach, former Army officer, and a guest on the Black Knight Nation podcast. Check out our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a lot of great interviews like the one we're going to have today, joined by co-host Steve Anderson. Steve Anderson on the road joining us. We appreciate that. And we're going to introduce our guest for tonight, former Army defensive lineman Bobby Kough. Bobby, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Bobby joining us from the great city of St. Louis.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good, man. It's good. Well, yeah, dude, just, thanks for coming on. Always good to reconnect with you, man. Good seeing you. Follow you on Facebook a little bit. Listen to your little real estate tidbits as I dip my toes in the real estate world as a homeowner that's renting out for the first time. So it's good, man. It's always good seeing the guys doing some stuff that they found a passion for outside of football, Army, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hope they're useful.
I know they are, man. And we'll get to it. What we like to kind of start is, just kind of hear your story and then go from, Bobby Kough as a junior, senior in high school and how Army recruited you all the way to, the father, the husband, and the real estate agent, Bobby Kough. So, yeah, man, if you can just kind of talk to us about how did Army ever come on your radar, and how did you end up, starting at prep school or our day or your journey there?
Yeah, so it was interesting. So I didn't know what West Point was going to high school. I wasn't always the best student. I definitely had some behavior issues, I'd say. But no, I was talking to Colorado State. I was talking to San Diego State. And then once West Point entered the conversation, my dad was like, "That's it. You're going to West Point." We're like, I'm pretty certain that he cut off all the other offers. Just because he was like, "Hey," he's like, "you need the structure, you need the, support that West Point provides." So yeah, man, I was hoping to go to San Diego State and do some partying. And then I found myself on my first flight ever. So my first flight in my life was out to West Point. Went out there with my pops, and it was a done deal. I got recruited by Coach Lyles. He knew my high school coach back in their NFL days. So Coach Lyles came out, and then Coach Payam Sadat at the time came out to the house, I think with Coach Ellerson as well. They both came out to the house and talked to the family, and we signed the papers.
Yeah. What was your dad's, why was he so into West Point? How did he know about it? What was, or is it just like the institution of West Point he knew that was best for you?
Yeah. I think it was the institution. He knew obviously about the military academy more than I did. I think when I was about 13 years old, I saw an Army Air Force game, and the only thing that I thought was like, wow, those dudes must do a lot of push-ups. So yeah, I mean, once we went out there too, just the history, and all the great men and women that have graduated from the academy, he's like, this is a place this is the place you need to go to. And also just, after football, because, we all have the dream, especially in high school, like we're all going to play in the NFL and all that stuff. But he understood like the reality of all that. So he's like, you want to be set up after the fact, and West Point will do exactly that.
Yeah. Love, Bobby Love, Coach Lyles, he was my position coach. And of course, Coach Sadat, me and him still stay in touch to this day, definitely. He's actually down in Texas now. I'm going to try to link up with him next time I head down to Texas. So,
Nice.
But yeah, no, it's good. It's pretty similar. I think my dad wasn't that direct with it, but he was definitely like, "Hey, why don't you give this a shot?"
Yeah.
Definitely having, going to the prep school was a good leeway for me, since there was no commitment afterwards, and it was just kind of like, give it a shot, see what it's like. And I think you'll find it a little more doable than you think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the prep school was huge for me too.
Now, were you always a young guy for your age, or did
I was in the middle, December.
Yeah.
So I was about in the middle.
I think the prep school maturity, physically, mentally, emotionally, was huge for me, man. Like that was definitely the best part of it, was getting that one more year of maturity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if I wouldn't have gone to prep school, plebe year would have been. It was already rough, but it would have been a rude awakening.
Now, did you guys do the double eagle flex at prep?
I don't think we did. I'm trying to remember. I mean, I was playing tackle at the time. So I just lined up in a 3 technique. It didn't really matter to me.
Yeah.
It was the same thing every time, over the left or over the right guard. So it was pretty simple. Just hit that gap or hit this gap. That was pretty much it.
These 2 guys, and let whoever was behind you try to fill the gap.
Exactly.
That's good, man. Who are some of the guys at prep school that kind of solidified you going to try the freshman year, or guys that you knew you would probably make an impact, 3-4 years down the road?
Yeah. So, I mean, we had some great, grad assistant coaches that really had an impact. I mean, Coach Simi was the head coach at the time.
Yep.
Him and Coach Green. So, they always had my back. Great support system there. And then in terms of buddies, Clayton Keller was probably my top guy. So, if I ever needed somebody to lean on, we kind of leaned on each other throughout prep school. And, just once you make that connection with the guys, and, I kind of shared suffering, if you will, just going through all the military stuff, going to football with them every day. We created a pretty tight-knit group fairly quickly. And I was like, yeah, we're all going to go through and do it. It was really no question. From prep school to, I mean, I take that back. I had a couple moments of doubt. Went out to Colorado. My brother played at University of Colorado. Went out there. The coaches were like, hey, we can get you a preferred walk-on spot. Maybe hopefully down the road get you a scholarship. I did consider that. But just the connection that I had with the coaches, the guys. I mean, Coach Ellerson was huge in that with me as well. And, it was pretty much a done deal once I got to West Point.
Yeah, I don't think that's, unique to you as far as, thinking about leaving or playing with the idea of leaving. I think I always go back to the phrase or the quote, whatever you want to say, is West Point's one of those places you hate it while you're there, and then you love going back there. As far as all the other aspects, the only thing that keeps you there is the football guys and football. At least for me, that everything else was kind of like a means to an ends. Really, your senior year, when you really start putting some other things in perspective.
Yeah.
How'd you guys do prep school? You guys remember your wins, loss, or overall? Because that was probably, what year was that?
2010.
Okay, so that was like year 2 of the Ellerson coaching staff, right?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. It was interesting. I'll never forget. We went down to South Alabama, and they were, I believe, I don't know if they were D1 AA getting primed for single A, but I mean, they were a much bigger school. Like when we showed up, the stadium was packed. I think they thought they were playing Big Army. And I remember we showed up, and that was a brutal game. I mean, we were playing, juniors and seniors that were starting for that school. But we played a couple teams tough, like Nassau Prep. They're always a pretty good team. They put a lot of big time guys out to SEC, stuff like that. But no, anything that was relatively local, I think we ended up getting the win. But whenever we traveled those farther distances to play those bigger teams, it was always a grind.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Nassau was always good. You know, we played Milford, I think, when we were at the Prep Academy or when we were at Prep. They were always good. But yeah, so talk to me about that year from, you know, basically, okay, you're at Prep, you're having some doubts. You probably had some doubts your freshman and sophomore year too, but talk to me about kind of transitioning from, you know, the prep school to now showing up to Army football and your first experience with playing Army football, whether that was camp or a game or a memory that you have that really is setting your mind for, okay, now I'm part of Army football.
Yeah. So I didn't really know. I didn't know how it'd stack up when I first got there, right, to West Point. I knew where I stood at Prep. Yeah, I started pretty much every game unless I had a nagging injury or something like that. Like I started every single game at defensive line. I knew Ellerson liked me, and when I got to West Point, you know, just kind of we see all you guys, and you guys are all, you know, 2-3 years in the weight room. Some of the seniors 4. So it was a little bit intimidating. You know, especially going through prep school and then going to our day, like going through Beast. Beast was a lot easier after having already done it at the prep school. So I was pretty grateful for that. But it wasn't until they moved me to nose guard that I was like, okay, you know, I have a shot at playing, because I really just didn't know. So they put me with Mike Gann. I think one of my memories is actually you yelling at me for jumping off sides, because every once in a while they would rotate me in, and we were in practice, and you got on me because I was playing right over the center. You know, the ball's right in my face, and I jumped off sides, and I remember you gave me an earful for it, but it was good. You know, I don't think I jumped off sides in practice after that. But no, I mean, it was a difficult transition going from, you know, high school. I was more of an outside guy. I actually played wide receiver, tight end, linebacker, you know, defensive end, but I was always more of like a 5 technique. Then they put me like smack dab in the middle, and I was, you know, maybe 250 at the time. I mean, Mike Gann, what was he, like 275, 280 or something like that?
Probably played about 280.
Yeah. So I was playing behind Mike.
Coming out of Beast too. That's not.
Yeah,
that was not easy to keep weight on during there too. And then they're going to make you a nose guard, and you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna be the best pound for pound nose guard you've ever seen.
Yeah. So, you know, the advantage that I realized that I had after a little while was just my hand speed. Like I was able to get my hands on the center pretty quickly. Now, if they ever crashed down or double team me, I was in trouble. You know, because I just didn't have the weight to kind of keep them up. But yeah, you know, it was good. It was a good transition. I think it was only a few games. Actually, the first game that I got brought up to varsity was our game against Rutgers was it MetLife?
The Meadowlands, yeah.
Yeah, the Meadowlands. Yeah. So that was my first game up on varsity. And then, you know, from there on, yeah, I got a couple reps. I remember the Notre Dame game at Yankee Stadium. They called for me to go in. I did not think I was going in at all, because I think the week before we played Kent State, I got no reps against Kent State. So I was on the other side of the field. They called me for the goal line package. I ended up not going in, costing a timeout. They weren't Ellerson wasn't too happy about that. But funny story, that actually saved me eligibility wise. It actually played out pretty well, because I didn't play any snaps. I was just really on varsity, you know, just traveling with you guys. But yeah, I mean, it was good. Once I started getting into a rhythm, you know, it was all practice speed. So I'd say the biggest jump was from freshman year to flying out to, you know, close to my hometown in San Diego and having that first start and, you know, getting a feel for game speed. That was definitely a different beast. But but yeah. I mean, I had a good support system while I was there. I had some of the family stuff with my dad and all that. But everybody was just, there was overwhelming support from coaches, from teammates that really kind of kept me going at West Point for sure.
Yeah.
You and Steve, I wanted to ask Bobby just about like you guys seem to have a pretty good relationship with you being the older player, Bobby being the younger player. But I see you guys when I was covering the team, your personalities were a lot alike. You guys were kind of the guys who were kind of the spark plugs, so to speak, or the guys who were Bobby. Well, you were an emotional player, right? I mean, you when you were out there, you laid it all on the line, man. I remember talking to you a bunch of times, and man, the coaches knew you were going to give everything you had. I mean, how much did you take from like maybe a guy like Steve later in your career, and how the lessons learned, so to speak? Like you'll never jumped off sides again, but there had to be more than that, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I mean, one of my first times coming into Kimsey, and it actually might have been my recruiting visit. I saw Steve doing power cleans, and I think that was the first time I ever met him. And just the energy, I was like, dang, I got to compete with this, And I was at the time, a scrawny high school. I think I was 230 soaking wet. And I go in, I see Steve power cleaning like 275 with ease. I'm like, okay. But no, I mean, once being on varsity, just being surrounded by those guys. I'd say two of the guys that had, huge impact were definitely Steve and Mike Gann. So yeah, I mean, I learned a lot from both, and I would say both of those guys were pretty. I mean, Steve, you were a high energy player. I know Mike was a pretty high energy player. I also spent a lot of time with Josh McNary, who's another guy that likes to get after it. So I was surrounded by some. I mean, that was a pretty good football team. That defense was pretty stacked up. Our record didn't speak for how good I think our defense was. I think we lost a lot of really close games that season.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just, I would say, mainly Steve and Mike, but also Josh, just the tenacity that they had while they were playing. Like, I was like, I wanted to keep that going for sure. And then, especially on the D-line side, just what Mike taught me, it was like, we gotta keep the ball rolling when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, no, I think it's, when you have, I remember, looking up to guys like Mike Vitti, who obviously is still, putting it all out there for Army football every day. And, I was always a very passionate player, even, at high school and stuff. And that's just the way I felt comfortable, That's where I felt comfortable playing the game. And, it's always good to, even later on after you leave and you watch guys play. I mean, and you get the experience now, Bobby, but when you see guys love the game and play with passion, it kind of brings you back a little bit. It reminds you just how you had it at one point,
Yeah.
So,
absolutely. 100%.
But that's like Sal said, I remember watching you, high energy player. I don't know if you guys still did the Ranger tab thing all the way through, but I'm sure you got a few Ranger tabs for a few games. I always lost it on long passes. I'd always loaf on long passes, and that's what cost me. So yeah. Coach should out in film after the game, be like, all right, and this is the play that cost you right here, Steve. And I'm like, yeah, well, I made the next play. So, if I didn't loaf, maybe I wouldn't have made that play.
Right. No, I was the same way. I mean, playing D-line, the expectation, and it's a good expectation, is to run to the ball every single play. But I'm like, man, I'm out there. I mean, some games I was out there 100% of the snaps on defense.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, if I do that every single time, those tackles for losses or those sacks might not come. So yeah, I definitely loafed on a couple of those longer plays for sure.
It's just knowing myself. All right. It's just having self-awareness. So
absolutely.
What's one of your favorite, games or favorite memories? It can be, a game, or it can be a flight or a flight back or bus ride back.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you two. The first one was my first ever sack against Boston College. That was pretty cool. It was just throughout my whole career, I just didn't know if I could be that good. I think I had a little bit of a confidence issue.
Mhm.
Looking back on it, if I didn't, it's you always look like the what ifs or whatever. But that sack, I think from that sack, the rest of the games on, my productivity just spiked because it gave me the confidence. It's like in Boston College, because you played Boston College a couple times, right?
Yeah.
Like they always had a pretty tough offensive line. Like
Those are some of the biggest offensive linemen I played against.
Yeah. And actually, Clayton Keller's good buddies with Bjorn Warner, who was at Florida State at the time, and Bjorn actually called me, and he was like, "Hey, like, what were you doing? What were you seeing?" Because I mean, I got that sack, but I was pressuring the quarterback a lot, so that was one of my like realizations. Okay, I could be pretty good at this game.
Yeah.
And then I would say my fondest memory was when I'm pretty sure we crushed Air Force my sophomore year. They came out there and, we hadn't beat a service academy yet. And I mean, that was probably my best overall performance. And just the energy, Nate Combs, him and I were trading off tackles for loss left and right. And just the energy on the field that day, like, is something I'll never forget.
It's awesome. Was that game? Was that
I remember that game.
Was that at Mikey or at Air Force?
Yeah, that was the one at Mikey.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, our defense was just everybody was playing at a high level. Like they couldn't do anything on offense, and our offense was playing well. So it was one of those games that just all the pieces fit together, and we got after them. And that was a good feeling for sure.
Do you remember what that week of practice was like? Were you just like dialed in that week?
Yeah, I mean, there's always, and Steve can attest to this. Whenever we play a service academy, there's always just a little bit more energy. You could just feel it, right? Like you're about to play one of your rivals. The Air Force coach, I think, was talking a bunch of trash just about us, and he was, I think, pretty notorious for that at the time. So it was great, just high energy week. And we were just dialed in. We were focused. And the beauty playing defensive line, it's like when a 270-pound like guard or tackle lines up, like, it's time to get after them, right? Like you're not playing the 310, 320 guys, somebody 270. There's also just that mental switch that it's like, all right, this guy's not beating me.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's a little more dialed in, unfortunately I felt like, especially younger in my career, there's just a little more pressure, which is not what you want, right? You don't want, you want to have that anxious energy. That's always good. But I always remembered feeling a little more pressure during those weeks, which was not the best. I remember my senior year, that was the first year where I did not feel any pressure, but I remember definite pressure and expectation, especially, junior year first year under Coach Ellerson, new defense, new offense, and then of course, I tore my ACL like the second to last play against Air Force my junior year. So that made me hate Air Force even more.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's good that you guys were able, your memory of that week is, not pressure, but being dialed in and, guys, flying around and stuff like that. Cause it was really, before we kind of made that turn, I mean, that was a game that made the turn where, Army was finally, competing against service academies again. Not competing, but, getting the wins. What was the one prior to that was what, 2005 maybe?
Yeah. Yeah. It was a while since we beaten Air Force.
Yeah.
I will say, man, that Navy game though, that was the biggest heartbreak of my career. Cause we Yeah, we beat Air Force pretty soundly, and then I just remember, being at Lincoln Financial, and the Commanders in Chiefs trophy was sitting right there. And I mean, even literally during the game, the entire game, it was at arm's reach. You could feel that trophy. And I had to go out there. Yeah, we all know what happened that game. I had to go back out there for that last 20 seconds, sitting right over the ball, and I'm just like, I'm thinking, is there a way that I can smack this out of the center's hand or do something to try to, but yeah. But no, I mean, going back to the Air Force game, yeah, I mean, that's something that, I'll never forget.
And we touched on
it, right? I mean, to the Commander-in-Chief. God, Steve.
I was just gonna say, we touched on it a little bit, but you kind of talked about how Mike and Josh had a good impact on you, and how that kind of propelled you forward with how you wanted to be as a defensive lineman. But we didn't really touch about who are the guys that came after you, and how did you kind of bring them in, or how did you want your leadership within that D line, that defensive room, be? As far as was there any self improvement or self approach on how you wanted to be for the team, thought process, or did you ever have that deliberate thought all right, it's my senior year, or hey, I am a leader of this defense now, this is how the guys are going to see me, or this is how I need to be?
Yeah, I'll just be honest. That's probably one of my bigger regrets. Is really kind of how I left all of that. I think, just personally, I was going through so much with my family life at the time. I probably went into it just a little bit more selfishly than I would have liked to. But once obviously I was 14, and then when my dad passed away, I got bumped to 15. So I got thrown in with this new group of guys that I didn't go to Beast with. I didn't, it was just different. I was still hanging out with all of my 14 buddies, and still kind of, hanging out with Clayton and, those guys. But I will say, when me, Mike, Eugenie, and Richard Glover were all starting on the line, I think we had some really strong culture. We had Coach Holmes during that time. So during that time, it was good. I mean, we had a solid defensive line. If we ever had gaps in our defense, usually the defensive line was performing pretty well. We didn't have a whole lot of off games at that time. But yeah, going into my junior year, I would say that's when us three were at our best. And then, yeah, senior year, I made some personal mistakes, just with the way that I handled the coaching change. And I kind of lost a little bit of that, I think, credibility by the way that I handled that. But yeah, I mean, I still made some good connections, and was still, Voight, he came in behind me, kind of similar style player. So he was a guy that ended up playing pretty well over the next 2 years. So we left a little bit something for them, but the culture completely changed when the new coaching staff came in, and it obviously, win wise, it was for the better. But yeah, that the senior class was in a little bit of disarray when all of that happened, I would say.
And I don't think that's unique to West Point. I think it actually is intensifies at West Point, because I think that senior class is, there's not a lot of time to, I don't know. From what I've seen, there's not a lot of time for buying. You're either in it or you're not. And the coaches aren't going to waste their time with the seniors. They're going to, start building from the juniors up, for the most part. And there's probably one or two seniors that they need to get on board. and the other ones are just, kind of shut up in color. And I'm not saying that's what happened under the new coach, but that's just what happens when regime changes at the college level. I saw it in high school when we had a coaching change. I saw it the junior year when, Ellerson came in after Coach Brock. Kind of saw it at prep school when Coach Ross left all of a sudden and Coach Brock took over. At least that was like the same coaching staff that continued to coach.
Right.
So there wasn't like a complete change in culture and everything, but I could definitely see how that could be tough. And as a 21, 22-year-old senior, how that can you can kind of lose yourself and just be like, all right, well, look, it's my last year. I'm gonna just put my head down and grind on.
Yeah.
And I was a December grad too, Bobby. And I'll tell you, man, that school is way different when the guys I went to prep school with, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, all with that last 6 months at the academy, it was like a ghost town. I found my friend, I found my buddies, and I didn't have an eligibility year, so I didn't have football either.
Yeah.
So I was finding team handball friends and like I was really out there. But I can definitely see how the academy changes when the guys you'd have built a relationship with are all now gone and you're still there grinding.
Yeah. And I actually ended up staying that whole year. It was a funny. I went and talked to the dean, and I told him, I was like, hey, I want to stay and graduate in May. And he ended up telling me, he was like, hey, I think you might be one of the only people in West Point history that is intentionally requesting to stay longer.
Yeah.
But a big reason behind that was I was dating my now wife. So just timing and all of that stuff, I was like, let's stick it out, graduate together. And then obviously it worked out. We're married, 2 kids and stuff like that. So, but no, yeah, it was one of the most humbling, I think, experiences of my life. Because, under the Ellerson coaching staff and having started sophomore year, junior year, having some big games, on junior year, I was the leader representative on the D line. And then kind of having a new coaching staff and then everybody starting off at square one with the coaches, like, they didn't care who started. Like, it was just everybody is on a level playing field. I think I just being a 22, 23-year-old kid, I didn't handle it too well. And I think there's a little bit of an entitlement there. Like, oh, hey, I put in all this time for this team and stuff like that. And, like I said, it was a great learning lesson. But it wasn't easy. It definitely wasn't easy, but it was, like I said, great learning experience for sure.
Yeah. And I think, and you're able to look back at it now, and take those lessons learned and know what you could have done better and stuff. So it's not like you thought you did everything right and there was nothing, you could have done better. So, it takes time to see those things sometimes, which is good. I think most of us go through that.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely.
Now, Bob, so your final football season was 15 then?
Yeah.
All right. All right. And then you guys, obviously go out with a loss against Navy. And then did you guys have a bowl game that year?
No, that was really, that was the first Monken season. It was really kind of just a rebuild.
Yeah.
Do the best you can with what you got kind of situation.
Was that, I can't remember, Sal, maybe you remember, was that like a 2-10 season or something?
It was the year before. Yeah, 2-10 was 2015. 2014 was what, Bobby? Did you guys have 5 wins or no?
Yeah. I think we did okay both my sophomore year was a little rougher. I think junior year we played a little bit better. And then, senior year was pretty rough. So 15 was my last year of eligibility.
So 2-10,
yeah, that was a rough season. Again, I mean, we had, because of the coaching change, we had big time players, quit, no longer playing. Like I know, my roommate at the time ended up not, just bouncing. He's like, I'm not going to deal with this. And so, it was it was a transition.
I mean, we had the same thing, Bobby. I mean, I had, especially, we had a really good player in Jamison Carter who didn't play his senior year. He was a great, slot back receiver type guy. One of my closest buddies, who was a linebacker his entire career, was, moved to offensive tackle under Ellison. He was like, he gave it like spring ball, and he was like, dude, I can't. This isn't even who I am. I despise tackles. Like, I'm a linebacker.
Yeah.
I can't even actually do this. Like, so
they gave me that pitch, and I just there wasn't a chance that I was gonna go to the O-line.
Yeah, and again, dude, man. I know we call 18-year-olds adults, but you're really not an adult until you're about 25, 26, and mentally. But yeah, no, I think I think you're what you went through. The two very, obviously your family situation and then the coaching change, boom, boom is, you have a lot to take away from it as a leader. I'm sure you took that in perspective when you became a platoon leader.
Yeah, for sure.
You were an engineer, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
By the grace of God, I branched engineers.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, it all translated to, just me becoming a better leader, both in the military, in the civilian world, in business. So yeah, I mean, it stung for a while, just that whole transition and kind of going through that. And I mean, just football being over in general, it stings a little bit, I was fortunate enough. I did, after the fact, I did a pro day, and that was kind of my, hey, I'm done with it. I gave it my best attempt. I talked to a couple teams, and they just leveled with me. They're like, hey, we can bring on some guys that are as good as you, if not better, and they haven't been out in the military for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I was just like, hey, I respect it. I feel like I performed well at the pro day. So, I left it all out there. After that, I think I was able to hang up my cleats and be proud. It's like I went through it and gave it an attempt at least.
Yeah. Very similar, man. Yeah. I went to a regional combine, and, I think we all know a few people that are, coaching or in the league or can give it to us straight and not give us the scout pitch or the oh man, we'd love to have you. We just, we don't have the room, or whatever kind of way. Just tell me to straight. And,
yeah.
Bottom line is you can deviate from the standard of what they see at that position very little by some astronomical factors. And if you're not that, for me, they were like, look, if you're not the 6'2", 245 middle linebacker, like, you got to be able to do something extremely special.
Yeah.
And of course, I was like, well, I can play special teams. That can always be an option. But but yeah, no. So you branched engineers, you became platoon leader. What were some of the things that you took away from Army football that helped you lead with either, that team mentality or that, work ethic, or what are some of the things that you think translated from Army football that made you either a good or well-rounded platoon leader?
Yeah. So kind of going back to, I think, my junior year when I was on that leadership council, it was one of those things you can't expect anybody to do anything that you're not doing yourself. So that was something that just leadership wise stuck with me as a platoon leader. So, if I'm the PL and I'm in the back of runs, or if I'm even, in the middle of runs, how are my soldiers going to get better? Like those guys that are struggling with PT, how are those guys going to get better, any better? So that was a big thing. It's like, always being out in front, being, obviously coming out of football, going into the military, being as physically dominant as possible, was a big thing. And then, the soldiers, not only that, but obviously with engineers, there is a lot of more of like the technical stuff that goes along with it. So it's like being competent in both the physical and the technical or intellectual, whatever you want to call it. You had to be top tier at both of those things. And then once your soldiers could look and say, hey, this guy's competent, he's going to be able to lead us if we do get into a sticky situation. That was one of the big things that I took away from football. It's like, like I said, you can't expect anybody to do anything that you're not doing, or something that you're not doing. So yeah, that was probably the biggest thing that I took away from football and applied to being a PL.
Yeah. Were you and your wife able to be in the MACP at that time? And were you guys able to serve together, or not serve together, but at the same post?
Yeah. So we actually didn't get married until 2017. So the first year, so she branched field artillery, I branched engineers. So I was at Fort Leonard Wood, and then just because, I was fortunate enough to get engineers. It was my first choice. So I was definitely lower on the totem pole when it came to posting. So I ended up staying at Fort Leonard Wood for my first, duty station, and then I went out to Korea. So all of that was, a year and a half, 2-year timeline roughly. Once I got back is when we decided, hey, we're trying to get posted together. It's most likely not going to happen. So we ended up doing the, typical route. We got married on paper, ended up doing the MACP. We got stationed at Fort Bliss together. And then we were able to, and it was interesting. It wasn't what we expected, because we were in different brigades. So we were in different training cycles. So I would go out into the field. She would be at home. Right when I got home, they were gearing up for going out to the field. Same with like NTC and stuff like that. But no, at least we were able to, be together physically at times, and, establish that connection and stuff.
Yeah, no. Now, did you leave the military from Fort Bliss, or did you do one more PCS from there?
Yeah, so I went and did a captain's career course back at Leonard Wood.
Yeah.
I ended up getting my master's at Missouri S&T. They have a pretty convenient engineer program where you just serve. You're a full-time student basically. So I ended up doing that, and then I stayed for another year and a half or so as a platoon trainer for Bullock. Yeah, so I was able to mentor the new lieutenants coming in. I was with a fellow football player, Justin Newman, wide receiver. So we were able to connect and have a good time out there, and coach up the young guys. So that was, and then after that, it was a hard decision. There was the biggest thing in the military for me was just the camaraderie and the like-mindedness, and knowing everybody has your back. Everywhere you go, you're going to build lifelong connections with fellow PLs, fellow captains, NCOs. So Molly, at the time, she got out and got pregnant with our first kid, and we just made the family decision that hey, it was time for me to call it quits. And so it was, I think I was in 1 year after the initial commitment, so 6 years.
Yeah. And did you know you were going to do, because I know as an engineer, I would just assume you go some kind of engineer path right when you get out of the Army, but What was that transition like? Losing, you go through a transition, and I obviously haven't gone through this yet. I'm still, rowing away at it. But I imagine it probably was pretty similar to after you hang up the cleats or put the cleats in the box, kind of feeling where, okay, I just lost a piece of my identity. Or at least I just lost something that created my identity. How am I going to put, what am I replacing it with, or how am I going to fill that void now?
Yeah. So I'll kind of talk through my transition and what all went down there, because it's fairly interesting. Because you're exactly right. I had like the systems management bachelor's from West Point. I got my systems engineering, I think I got those flipped, but I got my systems engineering management master's from Missouri S&T. I was actually, we were minutes away from putting a down payment on a new build out in Arizona, and I was going to go take a job at the Honeywell out there. Meanwhile, while all this is happening, COVID hits probably during my last year.
Yeah.
So Fort Leonard Wood came up with this policy that anybody that had my son was born, Bobby, he was born at the time. Anybody that had a kid 1 year old or younger was quarantined, like at the house, not coming in, not going anywhere, doing anything, out of a certain radius. So I was an instructor at the time. They didn't allow anything via Zoom just because of security reasons and all of that. They hadn't figured that out. So there's no way for me to really do my job. So first couple months, I was out there. I had a couple acres at the time. I was out there building chicken coops and gardens and, just trying to fill my time with something. I came back with like a little box, and it was chirping, and I got like 6 or 7 little chicks. And my wife was just like, Molly was just like, what are you doing? So during that time, I was just bored. It was just painfully boring. And I was like, what? It's like, how about I apply this to something that's going to make me some money, benefit my family. So I started looking into flipping houses. So I did about a year of just pure education, listening to podcasts, reading books. And then while I was at Fort Leonard Wood, I think I flipped like 3 or 4 houses. And I was like, this is pretty sweet. I was actually doing a lot of the work, which I don't think I would ever do again because I'm not a contractor. I'm not that good at it.
Right.
But I was doing a lot of the work, trying to cut costs and all that stuff. And then, I made 25, 30 grand on my first one. And I was like, man, this is pretty sweet. That nice little influx of cash. So I always knew that once I started doing it and I got it down a little bit, I was like, this is definitely something that I want to do. And just out of nowhere, I was talking with James Duncan. He's an old West Point football player, does a lot of the kind of recruiting and stuff for us to, find us jobs and kind of like a headhunter type deal. So I was talking to him and I was like, project manager, something engineering management related. And then also, just throwing it out there, like real estate. If you got anything that's, real estate related, let me know. And he actually was good buddies with Jimmy Vreeland, who is now the owner of the companies that I work for. And he connected us. And I think within like a month or two, our plans from going out to Phoenix changed to moving an hour and a half down the road to St. Louis. And kind of been here since.
Man, that is that's pretty interesting how a lot of people had to figure out what to fill that void during COVID was. I was deployed on the Southwest border mission at that point, so like it was very interesting to come back to see what big Army COVID rules were, because we were just down on the border keeping illegal immigrants from coming into America. Like we there was no like, Fort Campbell did the same thing. Hey, we're going to do remote. Like, you're going to call in, you're going to have conversations over phones, or you're not going to talk about anything because there's no security in it.
Yeah.
And people did the same thing. I think that's cool that, you realize that you can't build too many chicken coops before your wife turns you in this, probably get you checked out. And you looked at, a way to kind of, increase your footprint in your area, which is really cool. Like I said earlier, we bought and held our first house in Colorado Springs, and we're renting it right now. Not a flip or anything, but we put some work into it for sure, though. So I started. I've got several buddies. Mark Allen. A few buddies that do real estate, and I'm always, whatever free chicken you guys give, I'm always listening to it to see what I can do to help my knowledge of the whole thing.
Yeah. If I could go back, I would have bought a house at every duty station, which was, I would have had Molly buy a house at Fort Sill with the VA loan. I would have bought my first house at Fort Leonard Wood, gone to Fort Bliss. We would have bought a house there. I mean, the VA loan and the opportunity that we get, like, it's one of the best wealth builders that, is available to people.
Yeah. And I think that what, for me as, an Army football brother and, someone who just likes seeing guys do well that I've, that have touched me or I've touched them in their lives, is you definitely have a passion for it, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah, for sure.
I don't feel like, you're just like slugging away at like real estate, just grinding like, okay, I got to check in, check out. I got to, all right, let me do this quick video and make sure people know I still know what I'm talking about or whatever. No, man, it's like Bobby Cough's giving you like I just watched the one where you're like, all right, I just got stood up.
Yeah.
Just got stood up, but you know what? I'm in the area, so I'm gonna benefit you guys real quick. Let me bring you on and show you what I've been working on. And that's the kind of stuff that you don't have to do, and you only do it because you have a passion for what you do, and you're trying to help out other people. And I think that is one of as me and Sal do these podcasts, there's always some kind of theme that we see out of all these Army football players is they're trying to make the world better in their capacity.
Yeah.
Right. They're not selfish with the way they handle their passion or their profession or their free time where it's all about me. Nobody's making you do those, hey, check it out. If you're not thinking about this, and this, or, hey, if you're in this situation, let me give you 5 quick things that, nobody's making you do that. And you're only doing it because it's helping out other people. And that's, again, your passion, and me as a friend and just a guy that likes seeing guys, do well. It makes me feel good that you found, it gives me hope when I get out. There's going to be something that I have a passion for.
Yeah.
That I can bring that same kind of energy to.
Yeah, for sure, man. No, it's been it all happened for a reason. That I know my wife at the time, her family's from Arizona, and we will get back to Arizona eventually. But taking this opportunity was new for us. It was kind of, venturing out to the wilderness a little bit.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. Like I love it. Man, guys from the team will hit me up like, hey, I got a bid on my HVAC system that was this. Does that sound right to you? I'm like, it's a little steep. Here's how you can negotiate with them. Or some guys want to get into it. Man, I love talking about it. It's one of those things that it doesn't feel like work. Although I am working, and I'm being productive, and I run a team and all of that. It just doesn't feel like it. Like if guys hit me up, they want to hop on a Zoom call where it's like these other guys you see on Instagram, they'll be like, okay, that's going to be $5,000 for my time. It's like, no, like I want to, spread as much information and as knowledge as possible. And exactly what you said, man. I'm just within my sphere of influence, doing whatever I can to help those people out. Like that's what it's all about.
Yeah, man. Good.
Where can they find these videos, Bobby? Where can people find these videos?
Yeah, so Instagram and Facebook is probably what I'm most active on. So if you just follow me on one of those, I got a little social media coach that's kind of correcting me on some of my video tactics and stuff. But yeah, man, like and it's funny because he asked me what my goals were, and it's just, hey, I just want to connect with like-minded people, put out some good information, and if we get to a position down the road with some of these folks where we do some deals together and it's a win-win, that's kind of what we're looking for. But yeah, Instagram and Facebook. I'm just getting started. So it's all on there right now.
Are you at Bobby Kough or what? How do they if they just search Bobby Kough, will they find you or no?
Yeah. So Facebook's just Bobby Kough, and then Instagram's Bobby Kough 99.
There you go. There you go. You got to keep that jersey number, right, Steve?
That's right. Hey,
100%.
5-0, let's go.
I don't even think I knew what your first name was for the first 8 months that I was there. It was just Fitty.
It was just Fitty, yeah. I actually I called USA the other day, and they're like, "Okay, can you tell us the name on the account?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's Steve Anderson." And they're like, "No, it's not." And I'm like, "Well, I got USA when I was at West Point, so is it Fitty?" And they're like, "Yeah, you're Fitty in USA." I'm like, "Oh my god, I probably need to update that."
That's pretty good. I like that.
So, but Bobby, I appreciate it, man.
Great.
Appreciate you taking the time. Always good hearing, brother stories and what they're doing now. And really appreciate it, man. Really do.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure speaking with both you guys, and glad I got the opportunity, and it was great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate having you on, Bobby. Guys, if you're watching this right now, check out Black Knight Nation. You could follow the Army football program, especially recruiting. It's a mad time for Army recruiting. Lots of commits. I've been writing commit stories like 2 a day almost for the last week. And check out who's going to be the next future Black Knights and maybe future people we have on this podcast. Thanks again, Bobby, so much for hopping on. And guys, have a great night.
All right. Beat them.